I am a political scientist, and I specialize on representation. I was struck by the importance of representation when a can hit me on the back of my head on a double-decker bus in England. See, I was just coming back from university, sitting upstairs, when somebody threw a can on the back of my head with a big shout, "Go back to Poland!" Here's the interesting part. I'm American and I'm originally from Brazil. So I really wanted to turn around and say, "Hey, I'm from Brazil. Can I stay? Do I have to go to Brazil? Or do you still want me to go to Poland?" See, I was not speaking, but I was representing something to those people at the bus. This is very common that people speak for us, about us. I actually stayed silent. I didn't say anything. But this is very common. People speak for us, about us, and most of the time, it's not as contentious as my bus ride in England. Let me show you how common this is. Picture the United Nations. When the leader of a country speaks at the UN, that's generally considered the voice of the country. Celebrities also speak for us. For example, Angelina Jolie. When devastating floods hit Pakistan, Angelina Jolie visited the flood victims and brought their voices to the international stage. Those voices needed amplification. I've been working with business leaders and government leaders, creating processes and designing spaces for better representation, for more voices to be included. Let me tell you how we do this. One common way of doing this is to make sure that representatives are allowed and have permission to speak on our behalf. This looks different throughout the world. We might accept consensus, majority voting, delegation, appointments. Sometimes we also just allow leaders to speak for us because we see some leadership qualities in them that we trust, and we let them guide us. But then, let's say now we have these formal representatives. Were you ever listening to your leader, representative, and think, well, is that my voice? That's not my voice. In face of this, sometimes we try to open up the arena. We say we need more space to bring the multiplicity of voices to the arena. One way of doing this is clearly to make more space. My research with business leaders shows that one way to do that is to really focus on hiring practices. These are very important to make sure we hire for diversity. But I guess the next question is, well, okay, now we hired. Do the leaders actually give space for these new voices to be heard in these processes now? Where are these voices now? I also did research in European cities, and I watched how policymakers knew they had to bring multiplicity of voices to make sure that they solve local problems. So one way to do this is, of course, to invite representatives from local government, representatives from businesses, from resident groups, from NGOs, from charities, to participate. In one case, the most affected by these policies were women from specific communities. But for multiple reasons, these women were not available. They could not participate. They were not there. But they needed those voices. So in the absence of those women, somebody else spoke for them. Sometimes other women spoke for them, sometimes men spoke for them. This is very common. People speak for us and about us, especially if we're not there. It's like that neighbor of yours that shows up to every meeting at the association, in your housing complex. Or that role model parent at your kid's school that is also always there, always has something to say, and even brings donuts. This happens a lot. But then we say, wait, why are they speaking on my behalf? That's not my voice. One way we try to solve for this is to say, you know what, we need authentic voices. Let's focus on authenticity. Authenticity is supposed to save the day. But easier said than done. Some friends were visiting Brazil recently, and they called me and said, hey, can you recommend an authentic Brazilian restaurant? I said, yes, you're in São Paulo, you must go for sushi. And they're like, sushi in Brazil? I said, trust me. Then I entered this rabbit hole negotiating, trying to convince them why sushi was a good idea. Listen, the Japanese community in Brazil is the largest. Outside of Japan, they've been there for over 100 years. They're Brazilian, just trust me, go for sushi. Actually, I told my aunt about this, and she said, no, sushi is not authentic. So I don't know if others would agree with me. But this shows that people have an image, a perception, an expectation of what authentic is. So even if we bring our authentic voices, it's going to be really hard to beat the preconceived narrative. Think about your authentic voice. Have you ever toned down your authentic voice? Have you ever toned down your authentic voice because you want to keep your friends? Or because you want to keep your job? Or because simply you don't want to have to sleep on the couch? Or have you ever changed your voice just to say exactly what somebody wanted to hear? Some people, though, will fight to have their voices heard. Some people risk or even lose their lives to have their authentic voices heard. But authenticity might come with a price. Are we willing to pay it? Let me tell you about my mother. My mother, she is a portrait artist. She makes huge portraits, beautiful portraits. She's made portraits of Taylor Swift, Serena Williams, and even the Crown Prince of Dubai. When my mother uploads the photos of her portraits onto Facebook, Facebook wants to tag them as the real people. It's not them. It's my mother's representation of them. But she works really hard to capture their authentic selves. It's actually a good question if AI could represent us correctly, right? But really, she works really hard, right? To the point that it thinks it's them. But I wonder sometimes, if Taylor Swift actually saw my mom's painting, would she like it? Would she see herself? Would she want to change anything? Or if she didn't like it, could she simply shake it off? See, representation is integral to our society. It's really how we run societies. The act of representing seems always incomplete and imperfect because there's so many voices, and they keep changing. The act of representing requires continuous effort and self-reflection. Today, you are in the audience. Tomorrow, you are representing others. When you are in that position, ask yourself if others can see themselves in your representation of them. Can others recognize themselves? When you speak for them, can they recognize themselves in your voice? And always ask yourself, whose voice is this anyway? This is my voice. Thank you.